Hello and welcome to Special People, Extraordinary Times. Today I'm here with George Katzman, who was certainly living through the most extraordinary of times. And we're going to hear as much of his story as he would like to share with us. Hello, George. It's really wonderful to see you.
Hello, Elaine. Thank you.
You were in the American Army
Yes,
during World War II
correct.
in the European theater
of operations.
under George Patton
Right. I was a tanker.
as a tanker.
I was in 16 Tank Battalion.
You weren't claustrophobic?
I was not in the tank. I had a worse job.
What'd you do?
I was what they call intelligence and reconnaissance platoon for the 16th Tank Battalion. If you're intelligent, don't go into reconnaissance because what you're doing is riding in an open jeep as much as a half a mile ahead of the tanks. And once the Germans start shooting at you, if you still live, you radio back and the tanks come up and knock them out. I had one day like that 5 times, and I'm here.
Were you ever hurt?
I'm rated 100% service-connected disabled. I get a nice pension from the Army, and it's because of the way I speak. I was pinned under my Jeep for all night while the tanks were rolling on this dirt road above me. My concern was that they were going to fall into the ditch where I did. And I wound up in an Army hospital for 3 weeks, what they call dust pneumonia, a new word. I came out of it okay, except for this.
And a little PTSD, which they didn't call PTSD
No,
then.
combat fatigue.
Combat fatigue.
Right. And very common. In
Sure,
other words, you go through life in a peaceful way, and all of a sudden you come upon this horror, and all these dead people.
Well, the horror that you saw was because you liberated
I liberated
concentration camps.
Dachau, Langwasserlager. Lager means camp.
Yeah.
Langwasserlager was 10 miles south of Nuremberg. And my little platoon, we were down to 14 men at that time from the 20 we started with. We're the ones who broke open the gates to hell. I have my Army jacket here, and I'll never forget these walking skeletons, 60, 70 pounds maybe, smiling because they were free now, and they'd walk out, and we just stood there in shock. And they would touch my sleeve of my jacket. That's why I keep that jacket. And keel over and die. Remember, I was 25 years old. We all were young.
And you had food to bring them, but they couldn't eat it.
We took all the food we had. We radioed back for the mess sergeant. He came up with food, and it was a big mistake.
Yeah.
They got very sick, threw up.
Yeah, but how did you know?
We didn't know.
How could you know?
We didn't know. I gave one guy all the chocolate bars I had. Of course, there was a chocolate bar in our K rations. He got sick.
Sure. Used to eating water and bread
Right.
once a day. And all of a
Well,
sudden they have chocolate.
Let me explain to you why they would like that. They were skinny. The Germans were very clever. They'd go into a town, round up all the Jews. Then they would have what they called a selection. Those women and children would go one way and they'd be gassed. The able men, they would keep, use them as slave laborers for 9 months. I'll show you the chart that shows exactly what they did. They would feed them on maybe 500 calories a day. The average what a grown person should have is over 2,000.
Right.
But it was planned that way, so that by the time
Well, you could exist on 500. You couldn't grow. You couldn't be healthy.
No, you lost weight.
But, sure.
That's why I call them walking skeletons. And as they died off after 9 months, they'd bring in a new batch. And you talk to a survivor, and they'll use the word selection, which is where the whole thing starts.
Yes. Some people were selected when they came into the camp. They never got to a bunk.
Right. Anyway, We, of course, propaganda, we didn't believe this. And when we finally saw it, at that point, we started hating the Nazis. Before then, they were good soldiers. They were better equipped than we were. We could not knock out their tanks. We had to call in the Air Force.
Really?
My first view of one of our tanks, remember I was a tanker, was a M1 tank. The turret had 3-inch steel on each side and all around it. As I passed the famous church in Reims, we call it in English. I speak French. I looked to the right, and there was one of our tanks on its side, and it had a German 88 shell hole, both sides of the turret. That was 6 inches of steel. That'll take you away. Their machine guns were twice as fast as ours. And I brought back a Walter PPK pistol, which I wore under my arm and used, as a matter of fact. And I brought back a Mauser rifle, which was a German army rifle, and I sent home a lot of weapons.
With the firing pins removed?
No.
In those days, you could send them home as is.
Right, which we did.
George, how old were you when you went into the Army?
23. The
And you
reason I
were-
was 23 because I was working in a war plant before that in Waterbury, Connecticut.
So you were part of the war effort. They
For-
needed you.
Right. I used to get deferments all the time, until one day I went to my foreman. I said, "Don't send any more deferments in." He said, "Are you crazy? You'll go in the Army." I said, "Yeah, but at least I'll live." They had us working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, 1 week on days, 1 week on nights. I was down to 128 pounds. Came
That's
down.
without a concentration camp.
Right. So I said, if I stay here and you keep us on this schedule, I'm going to die. He said, I can't help it. I can't make an exception. So I went in the Army. I let them draft me.
And you were in for 3 years.
31 months. Exactly. You keep track of that.
You went in a boy, you came out a hardened, seasoned man.
Yep. Within 3 months, I went right back up to 172 pounds, all muscle. I received this jacket in 1943.
And it almost fits perfectly.
No.
What are you wearing beside your dog tags?
You wouldn't believe this.
I'll believe it. Whatever you tell me, I'm going to believe.
Before I went into combat, a chaplain came and talked to us, and he turned out to be Jewish. So he put this on,
It's a mezuzah.
a mezuzah. Here I go into combat. First of all, I have an H on my dog tags.
Means Hebrew.
Right. Second of all, I go fight the Nazis with a mezuzah. Does that make any sense? All right, this one's for being a coward, this one, no.
No. Tell me the truth. Now
Sure.
tell me the truth.
German occupation. American Victory Medal. This is the most important one. This is combat in Europe, that's the ribbon, and this little star is combat. This is for being a sharpshooter with my rifle. I fired expert on pistol and machine gun. I was assigned a rifle, M1 rifle, and I was a sharpshooter. And this you'll never believe, it's very important. Good conduct medal.
You were a good boy.
Had to be, otherwise you get killed. No, I was a good soldier. As a matter of fact, when I was discharged from the Army, I held the job of a major, not this one stripe. I was a photo officer of 15th Corps, and that's my photos. I had my own crew.
So
of
you
seven.
have all kinds of photos
Oh, yes.
on the table that you took yourself.
I took some, and the other men did. I put these together in Germany as an eyewitness with another guy who lives in Oregon. We made 20 copies of these. These are official United States Army pictures of what we found.
These are corpses.
Right. This is what we found after we liberated some of the concentration camps. Look at this guy with his face crushed in by a hammer. There's a picture, another dead.
Oh, my.
Dead, 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 dead. This one. Here, look at the women. The women. So anybody tells you...
How could human beings do this to human beings?
That's the question. This is when we got angry. This is what we saw, and these are official. Look at this guy. A walking skeleton. Here. I saw this.
I'm sorry that you did.
I'm sorry, too. It changed my whole life. It affected me. My favorite expression is, I tried war, I didn't like it. Well, I also tried poverty. But
You didn't like that either, right?
This is outrageous.
That is outrageous.
This is a translation in English from a German document. Now I'll read the entire thing.
Go ahead.
Just 50 years ago, we witnessed the ultimate in which Nazi terror, Nazi fervor, combined with corporate cost accounting, brought disrespect for life. The following table, taken from the American Heritage History of World War II, was discovered in a concentration camp where the SS means Schutzstaffel, and they were in charge of the camps. Rented inmates as slave labor for German industrialists. The inmates were fed inadequately, provided squalid living conditions, no medical attention, and forced to work until they died. Now here's
Here's the cost of those
right.
that manpower.
The table of profit per prisoner in an SS-operated concentration camp. The rental account, they would rent them out. The income from the rental of a prisoner per day was 6 Reichmarks. There are 4 Reichmarks per dollar. It was worth 25 cents, so this is $1.50. The deduction for the daily cost of meals, they charge them for the cost of the meals, 60 Pfennig, or 100 Pfennig to the Reichmark. Life expectancy, 9 months equals 270 days times 5.3 Reichmarks, so you have 1,431 Reichmarks. Minus the amortization on the clothing, 10 Pfennigs.
Oh, my God.
Well, this is what they wore. The profit from the rational use of the corpse. Number 1, gold teeth. 2, clothing. 3, any articles of value. 4, money. Minus the cost of cremation. They're very efficient accountants. 2 Reichmarks. So the average net profit from the corpse was
1,631 Reichmarks.
However, it does not include the profit from the sale of the bones and the ashes.
What a horrendous, horrendous part of our history that is.
Man's inhumanity of the man.
Yeah.
I'm still disturbed about it.
Well, you know,
So many years later.
if you look at these visuals, how could you not be disturbed about it?
Okay. Here's a skin, a tattoo they took off a person. Dead bodies, dead bodies, dead bodies, dead bodies. They packed them up, stacked them like cordwood.
That's right. They don't even look like human beings.
These people didn't know they were going to die very shortly.
Look how many of them are in such a small space.
Right. So let me ask you a question. Do you think this was the last of the just wars?
Absolutely.
Remember, we
Absolutely.
were attacked here. They killed over 3,000 of our kids at Pearl Harbor.
Everybody wanted to go to this war. Everybody who came back was treated like a hero. It hasn't happened since then.
True. One of my favorites is this picture here. You'll never know why. This was taken in Germany I'm carrying the German Army rifle, the M1, and under my arm is a German PPK pistol, which I actually used. I took that from an Austrian captain when he surrendered his platoon, his company to us. And I actually used this and killed a couple of people with it.
George, I want you to sit down so that I can properly say goodbye to you.
Elaine, I'm sorry I did this to you,
No,
but it had to be done.
please.
Too many people say it never happened. That gets me so angry.
As it should. I mean, how much proof do people need?
Oh, boy.
You know, how much did...
You have living survivors now.
Yep.
You have people. The worst thing I could think of recently was that there's an American young man in jail in Berlin. 2 years ago, he was very stupid. He went to Germany, and he was talking to a group of people, and he said that the Holocaust never happened. Guess what? In Germany, that's an automatic jail sentence, 7 years.
Really?
Automatic.
In the United States, he can say anything he
Free
wants.
speech. Here we have free speech. So he's still sitting in jail. What do you mean it never happened? I'm not the only one who saw this.
Right. If it never happened, who are these people?
Uh-huh.
And what happened to them?
They're dead. Well,
I want to thank you for your time and for allowing me to share a little piece of your history, because it's very important that we never, ever forget that this did happen. Indeed, it happened.
right. I just feel obligated to talk now. I can't stand when somebody calls me a liar, that I didn't see this. Of course I saw it.
Yep.
And I smelled it. Amazing. That's why they call it the last of the just wars.
It was. It
When we
was.
liberated Czechoslovakia, I'll never forget this. The moment we crossed the border from Germany into Czechoslovakia, we were heroes. They would have a partisan jumped on the hood of my Jeep to lead me where to go. And the Czechs would throw flowers into my Jeep, throw little bottles of liquor and this and that, and they would applaud. What a transition from Germany into Czechoslovakia. I've gone back to Czechoslovakia a couple of times, and a friend of mine goes very often, one of my buddies, and he's treated like a hero.
Still.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. There's a monument in Pilsen, Czechoslovakia to my uniform. That's it.
Wear it proudly, George
Third
Katzman.
Army, tanks. I don't think of it as pride. I think of it as a job that had to be done, and we did it.
Well, I'm glad we did.
I hope nobody ever goes through it again.
I hope so, too. Thank you. And it was a pleasure meeting you, talking to you. Live long and prosper, my dear friend. For OCTV, I'm Elaine Kugelman, and thank you for joining us today and listening to a piece of the life story of George Katzman and our edition of Special People, Extraordinary Times.